Pokemon Legends Arceus is going to be the Breath of the Wild of Pokemon. At least that's what the Pokemon Company wants you to think when watching the first teaser trailer of this game. With its mellow music and tone, sweeping camera shots, and large vistas, they certainly wanted to evoke the same feelings we felt when traversing Hyrule in the latest open-world Zelda game. We can certainly see some inspiration was taken from Breath of the Wild, but just how far will that inspiration go? In this edition of the Load Times, we're going to be taking a look at some of the in-game systems that made Breath of the Wild great, and see if they would carry over well to an open-world Pokemon game we know next to nothing about. So stock up on your Hyper Potions and Max Revives as we dive right into it. Ever since players first paraglided off the Great Plateau, fans have been asking for the next Pokemon installment to be given the same treatment. Well, that's not necessarily true. Fans have been clamoring for an open-world Pokemon game for years now. When Sword and Shield eventually released, the wild area sections of the game, the closest Pokemon has ever gotten to an open world, left a lot to be desired. Legends Arceus, Arceus? Yeah, seems to finally be the adventure fans have been asking for. After years of criticism that Pokemon games play it too safe, that they don't take enough risks and try to innovate, criticism that I echoed myself, it looks like they're finally willing to try something new on a large scale. It's worth saying this game is still quite a ways off and is in dire need of some technical polishing, and there's still so much we don't know about it. The new trailer showed us just enough to tease some new gameplay systems and mechanics and left us wondering what else will be in store. Now, fans have been quick to point out the Breath of the Wild similarities we've seen. I mean, that's what this video is about. But aside from the game's visual and audio aesthetics, and maybe some stealth mechanics, there's not much else to directly compare it to Breath of the Wild. We can only speculate. The trailer made it a point to show us that player movement in this game will be different from any Pokemon game before it. This dodge roll ability is something we haven't seen before and suggests the game will be more action-oriented. The direct narrator even made it a point to call this game an action RPG. Diving, rolling, crouching, and sneaking up on enemies, all mechanics that played an integral role in exploring Hyrule. What made traversing Hyrule even more engaging was the ability to climb on virtually any surface in the game. Players were simply held back by how much stamina they had. We haven't really seen anything like this in Legends Arceus. There hasn't been any sign of any climbing or swimming or even a stamina meter. In fact, we didn't see an on-screen HUD at all aside from a brief moment in battle. Now, that doesn't mean these systems aren't in the game. The developers could have elected to just not show us yet. I mean, if we're truly going to be exploring a large open world, we'll have to get around in a more efficient way somehow. This leads me to my next point, which is mounts. We've been zooming around Pokemon regions on bikes for years now. I would say it's safe to say we'll be doing the same in this game, but seeing as how it's supposed to take place many years into the past, who knows, maybe bike technology hasn't progressed far enough. But we will have to get around the supposedly vast world somehow. The idea of Pokemon mounts isn't foreign to the Pokemon series. We've been using water Pokemon to ferry us over large bodies of water ever since the series' inception. The Pokemon Let's Go games offered a handful of Pokemon you can climb onto to quickly take you from place to place, but this was just more fan service than anything truly substantial. Even Breath of the Wild's mounts, which were just horses, didn't offer much outside of speeding up terrain traversal. Players who purchased and completed the game's DLC were rewarded with the Master Cycle Zero, which was a lot of fun to zoom around on, but again, not integral to the game at all. However, I can see mounts becoming an integral part of this game. In past Pokemon games, special HM moves allowed you to cross what would otherwise be uncrossable terrain. This acted as a sort of gatekeeping and was really used to keep players on each game's fairly linear path. It's a system that eventually just became frustrating and archaic, as each HM also took up a move slot in combat, and many of those HM moves weren't great in a fight. In recent years, they streamlined it a bit. Players still needed to find these special moves and abilities to allow them to cross harsh terrain, but it was no longer tied to a Pokemon's moveset. It still acted as a form of gatekeeping. What if Legends Arceus expands upon this system? What if traversing certain terrain was only possible with certain Pokemon types? Let's say you come upon a mountain or a sheer cliff you want to climb. You might have to look around and find some rock-type Pokemon who can help you with that. Maybe this Pokemon would only stick around with you for a limited amount of time, so you wouldn't have to commit to adding them to your party. Or maybe this may encourage the use of multiple Pokemon parties. We know this game is a spin-off of sorts, so who's to say the typical system of find your 6 favorite Pokemon and stick with that party for the whole game is still present? Maybe the gliding mechanic of Breath of the Wild is in this game too, but you have to find a flying-type Pokemon to do it. Maybe a ghost-type Pokemon could allow you to become invisible and sneak by tough enemies, or help you stealthily catch a rare Pokemon. I think the possibilities could really open up here and would solve the problem of monotonous terrain traversal present in a lot of open-world games. One other problem that often presents itself in large open-world games is what do you fill that large open world with? Breath of the Wild used 2 systems to address this. One was the over 100 shrines that were littered across the map. These shrines acted as mini-dungeons to complete. Some were out in the open for you to stumble upon, while others took a bit more digging to find. The other system was the weapon durability system. Every weapon, shield, and bow Link came across had a certain durability assigned to it, with a notable exception or two. At some point after a certain amount of use, that gear was going to break. Luckily, new gear and gear types were also littered across the map. Sometimes in chests, sometimes in hard-to-reach places, and sometimes in the hands of the enemy. This kept that drive of needing to explore alive, because players were always rewarded with something that would be useful. Now, Pokemon is a different sort of game. Your weapons for the purpose of gameplay are your Pokemon, and I can't see Pokemon really breaking unless they do something different and potentially controversial and they don't let you keep your Pokemon permanently. Maybe these early models of the Pokeball that we see can only house your Pokemon for so long, but that would send the idea of creating bonds of friendship with your Pokemon out the window, so I can't really see them doing that. What I could see happening is them borrowing the level up system from the Let's Go games. By catching multiple of the same Pokemon species, you would be rewarded with candies that you could use to level up your current Pokemon party members. This would encourage players to keep catching Pokemon throughout your adventure even if you already had your set party. However, in the Let's Go games, this feature was implemented because it was not possible to do battle with wild Pokemon and gain experience to level up. You would only catch them in the same style as catching Pokemon in Pokemon Go on smartphones. So far, it doesn't seem like that feature is returning, and I'd be shocked if it did. But this idea of encouraging players to consistently catch new Pokemon was something I really enjoyed from the Let's Go games, and I would love to see it come back with some tweaks and adjustments. Pokemon's gameplay loop has often been explore route, catch wild Pokemon, battle trainers along the route to strengthen your Pokemon, arrive in a big city, and challenge that city's gym leader. Often these routes and gyms would offer some light puzzle solving, but nothing to the extent of a Zelda dungeon or even a Breath of the Wild shrine. Instead of littering this new open-world version of Sinnoh with shrine puzzles to solve, maybe players would stumble upon camps of trainers or tribes of Pokemon. They could act as sort of mini-gyms. Maybe you would have to build up a reputation with these people or Pokemon before being allowed to venture further out into the world. We know that this game takes place many years ago, and that you, the player, are working on Sinnoh's very first Pokédex. This leads me to believe that this version of Sinnoh won't be very populated. It's probably why they chose this particular time period. Breath of the Wild developers had the game take place post-apocalypse, so that the world could be littered in ruins rather than have to populate this huge overworld map. We also know that this village we see in the game will act as the player's base, which most likely means we'll continue to return to it throughout the game. Maybe whatever we find out there in the wild we'll bring back with us to this village and help build it up. Maybe we'll recruit other characters or even Pokemon to help build this town up, similar to Breath of the Wild's Terry Town, but maybe even larger in scale. Does this mean this is the only town in the game? There's no way of really knowing. Maybe at the game's start, it is the only town, but as you progress through the game, you help establish other towns and communities. Or maybe a lot of this is just wishful thinking. Something that I've always found surprising in Pokemon games was its lack of side quests. They've always been present, but have been very few and far between, and are nearly never necessary. Breath of the Wild had a fair number of side quests. Yes, there was a fetch quest or two here and there, but many were pretty substantial that had players do anything from discovering secret locations to snapping pictures of rare and dangerous enemies. Many of these ideas would be possible in a Pokemon game and would really help to flesh out the world and give players more interesting ways to interact with it. There are certainly other gameplay systems Breath of the Wild feature that I haven't mentioned, like all of the outfits Link could find and upgrade to improve his various attributes. Maybe some outfits in Legends Arceus could help the player catch certain types or species of Pokemon easier than others. Whatever they end up including in this game, whether it's these things I speculated about today or new ideas entirely, I hope more than anything that Legends Arceus pushes the Pokemon series forward in a way that Breath of the Wild did for Zelda. Zelda was in no way a struggling series before Breath of the Wild, just like Pokemon continues to make millions. But by throwing away conventions in favor of bolder and riskier ideas, this helped to launch the series to highs the likes of which they hadn't seen before. Pokemon just needs to ask itself, does it want to be the best like no one ever was? Cheers.